Hello and welcome to Season 2 of the Teacher's Journey podcast. I'm your host, Brian Costello, here to talk with some incredible educators and hear the stories that have made them who they are today. Welcome back to the Teacher's Journey. I'm your host, Brian Costello, and I am incredibly excited to bring this next episode to you. I think it's one that's going to resonate with a lot of different people out there. I know this because I just spent 15 minutes talking to our guest about all the same things that are going on in my life. And so I'm excited to bring Lauren Taylor on the program. Lauren is one of my oldest Twitter friends. We've kind of connected a long time ago, and it doesn't seem like that long ago, but maybe it is. And we've been in contact ever since. And she's got a really exciting and interesting story to share with everybody. So thank you, Lauren, for taking some time to come on with me tonight.
Thank you for inviting me and getting me away from my kids for a little while. I got to sneak away and have a conversation for once. So that's nice.
Yeah, isn't it nice? So there's so much to get to, and there's so much to your story that I'm excited to get people to hear, in large part because I think it's important that people hear how normal this is, to go through all the things that we've been through. But before we get to everything else, let's go back to kind of the beginning and talk about how did you get into teaching? Like, when did you decide teaching was for you?
Well, I wasn't like one of those kids that was like thinking about what they wanted to be when they grew up and a teacher came to mind. I was always, like a NASA engineer or a marine biologist or something. But one thing that did stick with me throughout all the years was my love for reading. In college, I took a lot of reading and writing courses, everything from women's literature to British literature, creative writing, theater, all of that. So I've always had a love for that. However, I think that like a lot of people in high school and even college, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do yet. I kind of had that end goal of just let me graduate, let me find a good paying job to pay off student loans, and we'll go from there. So out of college, I actually went straight into the corporate world for a couple of years. And, it wasn't bad. I learned a lot of things, but sitting in a cubicle every day, I was in the back of my mind still thinking about my love and passion for reading. And I was like, you know what? You only live once. I don't love this job. I love reading. I love writing. Why am I not sharing this passion with other people? So I actually went back to school and got my degree in secondary education, which didn't take too long because I wanted to become an English teacher, and I had already taken all of those English courses. So went back to school for that, started student teaching, absolutely fell in love with it, being able to teach kids my love for reading and writing and seeing their passion for it too. And, even those kids that are like, I don't like this, I don't like reading, I don't like writing, being able to see them change their mind or kind of at the end of the year be like, you know what, Miss Taylor, I really like this book that you recommended. I'm going to try this series too. It was just amazing. So that's kind of where it started and where I ended up, and taught high school for about 3 years, AP language, and then moved to middle school for a couple years, which was a whole other beast in and of itself.
I'm gonna slow you down before you go through your entire career in 5 seconds.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. It was perfect. But this is what usually happens: is people get into it and they start telling the whole story. And I want to stop before we get too far ahead, and just talk about that the first year or so that you were teaching, and you kind of came to teaching from outside of education in the same way that I did. And talk about your first year in a school, your first time like teaching a class or classes that you had in high school level. What was it like? Like, so you said you sat in a cubicle for a couple years, you did your thing, your job was okay, but you really loved reading and you wanted to share it. So when you finally got to teach, what was that like?
It was amazing, but also terrifying. Like my first year, I was in student teaching. I was kind of thrown in with the sharks. I had a couple of really good mentors, but they weren't my actual like classroom mentor teacher. So I kind of went in like blindsided, honestly, not knowing too much what to do other than what I had learned in my education courses, which, you know, I'm a very hands-on, needs to experience it type of girl. So I didn't really get what I needed until I started student teaching. So it was amazing. It was in a very low income school district. So I feel like my relationship with my students that year was my biggest thing. A lot of these students had come from really tough homes. Some of them lived in their cars. I remember getting one of my kids getting a phone call one day in the middle of student teaching, in the middle of class, saying that their brother had been shot and killed. So my first year, I would say, was a roller coaster. I loved teaching those kids. It was a tough environment, but honestly, some days I went home crying, wondering if I could do it, because it's not something that you just leave at work. You know, teaching is a job that you carry with you at night, during the weekends, during family time. Your mind is going to drift off to those kids. So as a student teacher for that first year, to be in that district with those kids, very rewarding, but also very tough. And I had a great relationship with them. So we kind of just learned things together, you know. I was really scared when I got that placement, knowing what I knew about that school district and that neighborhood and things like that, but I wouldn't change it for the world. They were the type of kids where I could ask, hey, what's not working for you? What is working for you? And they were blunt enough to be like, hey, Miss T, this isn't working. Like, let's work on this together. This is what we would rather do. Why don't we try this? So I feel like I learned just as much from them, if not more, than they did from me that year. So I think that was like the best thing that could have happened to me as far as student teaching goes.
So I mean, that's really wild, and there's a lot to that. I'm sure that year was a emotional, at least to say the least. And you're right that it's not the kind of thing that you just like put down and leave behind you. It's the kind of thing you take with you, and it's difficult, especially as a student teacher, to learn how to function outside of the classroom when you have other stuff to do that's not school related. And you have all that. Like, how do you function when you're worried about this kid who just found out that his brother been shot? Like,
exactly.
How do you function? I still have kids that I haven't taught in 4 years that I think about, oh, wow, I wonder how that kid is doing. And I'll like reach out to a parent or a family friend of theirs and say, hey, or a teacher that I used to work with, say, hey, how are they doing? Because I can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah. And I think that's what also makes good teachers. You know, you have to be an empathetic person. You have to be a caring person and a strong person. And even though it's difficult and it's hard, we are the type of people that these students need. So it's definitely a lot of baggage, and it's something to think about when you're thinking about becoming a teacher. But I also think it's necessary.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's difficult too, but you do learn a little bit of how to, I don't want to say completely compartmentalize it, because you definitely bring it with you, but you just kind of learn how to function with it there, like in the back of your mind or as part of who you are.
Right.
Kind of learn how to make it work.
Yeah, I think it was hard for me to realize also, and this is something that I realized my first year of teaching, student teaching with this group of kids, is that you can't save every kid. You know, it's not our job to save every kid. We can do our best to be there for them as much as we can and build those relationships. And we can teach them some mechanisms to help them save themselves, but it's not our job. And I think that was something that was like a hard pill for me to swallow, because I'm that type of person that feels like I need to take care of everybody and try to save everybody. And
Yeah, and that's so important too. I think, and it's a conversation I've had with a couple teachers I work with this year who are the same way, and they want to help every kid, and they want to save every kid. And it's just not your job to save every kid. It's your job
right.
to be there and to provide them with the things that you can, so that if it's their time and you're the right person for them, they'll come to you. And it's
Exactly.
so hard to accept that as somebody who cares so much,
Mm-hmm.
that you're not going to be able to save everybody. And the other thing I think that goes along with that, and it's a lesson I learned a little later in my career, is that you can't win sometimes. Like sometimes it's okay that you can't win. Like there are scenarios, like no matter what you did for that kid whose brother was shot, there's not a winning scenario there. Like
Right.
it's always going to be a loss. It's just a matter of how can that person move forward and what can you do to make life a little better for them. But it's so difficult. You're not everybody's savior. So such an important lesson, and you were able to learn that. So you switched from high school to middle school.
I did.
I switched from early elementary school to middle school. Talk about being in middle schoolers. What did you notice about middle school? What did you like about it? What did you think was a little little off, a little different for you?
Yeah. So, honestly, it wasn't really my number one choice to switch from high school to middle school, but I had this really long commute the first few years of teaching. It was about an hour, and was coaching at the time too. So some nights I wouldn't get home, like Friday nights, wouldn't get home until like 11:30, midnight, and it was just draining and exhausting, and gas money and all of those things came into play. But I found a job close to home. The only thing was that it was middle school, and I was like, okay, I'm certified in middle school, and it's reading. I'm teaching reading to 8th graders, and I've taught freshmen before too, so it can't be that different, right? It was completely different.
Just imagine if they were 7th graders. I'm saying, because there's such a big difference between 8th graders and 7th graders.
There is. I was like, okay, so I've taught 9th grade. 8th grade cannot be that different. And it was. And I'm still honestly trying to figure out what happened in that year between 8th and 9th grade to make such a big difference. But it was a lot of fun. It was difficult for me at first. The kids were just, I don't know, some people who I've talked to about this were like, well, 9th graders are starting high school and they're still kind of scared because they're starting at a new level. And 8th graders feel like they're the top dogs at the middle school. So I'm not sure if that's it, the age. I'm not sure if it's that they're growing up completely different in this like tough society with social media and all of that. But I felt like a lot of them I felt like a lot of them were so like attached to their social media and their phones and dealing with that type of drama.
So much drama.
Oh my gosh, there was so much drama, so much more than I had like seen at the high school level. So I don't know if it's
at that point they're starting to move past it a little bit, and I don't know if what it was like at your high school, but I know at our high school, they go from it's a decent sized middle school. They have like 1,000 kids. They have another middle school with 1,000 kids, and then when they go to high school, they're in a school with almost 3,000 kids. Not
right.
And when they're in middle school, they really only spend most of their time with 200 kids, and in those 200 kids, they spend most of that time with the same kids in the same classes. So it's a very small environment for a very large school, which is great. But also, you get those kids in there, like they're very comfortable. Like they're at the top of their stratosphere, so to speak. When you throw them into a high school with 3,000 kids, all of a sudden they don't have the same identity anymore. They don't know where things are. They don't know who to talk to if things are a mess, or how to, work any of the systems that they got to figure out. Like they they're lost. So they have to
Yeah.
start over again.
Yeah, that might be it. And the school that I taught at was a very tight-knit community, pretty small school. Everybody knew everyone, and uh, middle school is just, and I haven't taught 6th or 7th grade, but I have also read that like at this age, it's like their mind is growing at the same rate it did like as an early childhood kid.
Yeah,
So
there's a lot going on.
yes, there's so much going on, and they're just absorbing all of this information, and I'm sure that also has something to do with it. But I did get to teach reading, which was a lot of fun, and that was a new subject for me to teach. And it was also kind of difficult for me to go from some of the typical like higher level reading and AP language down to like a middle school level reading. But it was cool because I was like picking up copies of books that I hadn't read in years. And I was being introduced to this new young adult literature that was also amazing, that I probably wouldn't have had the time to read or thought about reading unless
I will
had.
say, like, our middle school kids, some of the books that they read are so, I don't know where they were when I was in middle school, because they seem they're so interesting. I mean, yeah, they do read some books that we had back, like when I was 9,000 years ago. But reality is, like, when I look at the books today, I'm like, wow, that actually looks like a really good book. Or they're reading something that's so different, or so like it's written in a different way, or brings in a different aspect of different cultures that we just didn't see when I was in middle school, and it looks so much better. Yeah. And so I end up picking up some of those books.
So much.
Reading them a bit.
Yeah, and also graphic novels, which I had never. I mean, there had been a few that I had read, but a lot of my kids were really into graphic novels, and they introduced me to that. And now, like, I love them, and I'm trying to get my hands on all of that and adding it to curriculum and things like that. And I think what I learned during my couple years at the middle school level teaching reading is that as long as my kids are reading, I'm happy. If it's a graphic novel, I'm totally happy with that. I feel like we have so many teachers who feel the pressure to get their kids reading like these classic novels that they had read, or they feel the pressure that their kids need to be reading at a certain level. And I agree, like, it's important to get your kids at a certain level, but like, let them enjoy reading. I feel like so many of them say, I hate reading, I don't like this class. I had so many of them coming in saying that, what do we have to read? And I'm like, I want you to read what you want. I don't want you to hate reading. Reading is supposed to be fun and interesting and introduce you to new things. So,
and I can remember not enjoying reading for the longest time as a student because I didn't identify with any of the things we read.
Exactly.
So if we read 10 novels in a year, I may have enjoyed 2 of them. And the rest of them I skimmed through well enough to be able to pass and do well on whatever the project was or the test was. But I really, there's only a couple of them where I read them and really read them cover to cover because I was hooked on the book itself. And it wasn't until after I got out of high school that I started actually reading books that I liked.
Right, because you had a choice probably with what you got to read. I think choice is the biggest thing when it comes to getting kids to read. Like, let them read what they relate to, If your girls want to read about a female protagonist, like, help them find that book. If, the boys are only into a certain type of novel, help them find that. Like, find out what they're interested in. I could not get this kid. His name was Wyatt. And he just refused to read anything at all. Just, I hate this. I can't find anything in the library, whatever. And I remember like celebrating at the end of the year because I finally found something that he was interested in. Like, he was an avid video game. Like, that was his life. Just loved video games. Like, could tell you the history of every single video game that there was. So I
Ready
sat
Player
down
One,
with the
ready to go.
yeah, exactly. I sat down with the librarian and I was like, I've got to get Wyatt a book in this library that he's interested in. So we sat down and tried to figure it out, and he was so excited that we had taken the time to order these books that were just for him. So I think even just taking like a few minutes to sit down with a kid who says that they hate reading, find out what they're interested in, and then go find them a book, or books about that topic. I just feel like, yeah,
That's
I don't know
crazy.
why most of us, and I'm saying most of us, I'm sure there's amazing teachers out there that would do the same thing, but I know, like what you said, growing up in our high schools, like that never would have happened.
No, I mean, I did have a teacher my senior year who basically said, you can pick the books. I have to approve them, but you can pick your book, and then you do your projects based on the books. But by that point in my career of schooling, I didn't really know
Like,
how to
I'm
pick books
done.
anymore.
Yeah.
I picked books that I thought I was supposed to pick. I read a couple that, like, more classic ones that I hadn't read before that maybe I thought, oh, I would like to read that, I think, because I heard it's okay. Or like, I read like the Lysistrata and Through the Looking Glass and stuff like that, and like some plays and some classic novels and some ancient Greek stuff, and that was okay. But realistically, like, I didn't even know how to pick a book for myself because I'd never done it. Like, it was so long since I'd been able to just pick a book and read for pleasure. Like probably third or fourth grade was the last time I remember really reading books, like just because I felt like it.
And you make a good point there, like, and I heard that a lot too with my reading kids. Like, I don't know what kind of book to choose, or that book looks too big, I'm not gonna grab that one, and I'm like, it doesn't matter the length if you're interested in it and it hooks you,
You'll cherish the whole thing.
Yeah, so I think that's another thing. We need to learn how to help kids choose books, because some of them are at that point where they just don't know where to start. So just starting with some of their interests and just sitting down in that relationship aspect again is so big, and just talking to them about things that they like makes a big difference.
Absolutely. So that's awesome. And middle school is such a weird place. I love teaching middle schoolers because they're basically like giant kindergartners.
They really are.
They're awesomely weird, and they all in their own unique ways, and they're old enough to get jokes, but they are most of the time they're young enough to still laugh and have fun or find things
and
exciting
not roll
and cool.
Their eyes at you and be like, you're such an uncool person, Miss Taylor.
Oh, I tell Melissa, I'm like, look, whatever it is that you think is cool, I guarantee you will not be cool by the time you finish this class, because I will ruin it so much. Like, I'm going to destroy everything you think is cool, because I'm just going to absorb that into my persona, and you'll hate it forever.
Yeah,
just like
pretty much.
But I already know I'm cool passed me by a long time ago, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and they have like no concept of age either, because I remember them trying to guess my age, and it was either like 19 or like in my 50s, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, really? Do I look like I'm that young or that old? Like, no concept.
I just sprouted a few extra gray hairs because one kid I think said like 70, and I was thinking to myself, are you kidding me? That if I'm still here teaching you and I'm 70,
I know.
I don't know. I don't think I can pull it off anymore.
I don't know if I'll last that long.
Yeah. But so weird, crazy middle school. And then I think I kind of remember that because I think I remember you like were painting furniture and like designing things around. It was really cool, like the way you had your classroom set.
Yeah.
So talk about what next, because this I think is kind of takes an interesting turn.
What next? So
not that it wasn't interesting to begin with, but
taught middle school for a couple years, and middle of my second year at that school, found out I was pregnant with Leo, who will be 4 on Friday. Actually, it's crazy. So,
Not bad for a 50-year-old middle school teacher.
exactly, right? So that changed things a lot. So at that point, when I found out I was pregnant, I was like, okay, I can do this. This is cool. Like, I've always wanted to be a mom at some point. And just had these big aspirations, like gonna have him in April and then go back and teach the following year. No big deal. I'll have the summer off with him. We'll be good to go. So you, I know as a father, know that like that's difficult.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I had Leo, and we've kind of touched on this before. For those of you who don't know my story about Leo, he would love him to death. He was the hardest baby, and I'm sure so many parents think that about their firstborn. But I was delirious. I was not sleeping at all. Like, the only way to get him to sleep, maybe a couple hours consecutively through the night, was if he was in bed with me. So he's like up rolling around all night. I'm not getting any sleep. August rolls around. It's time for me to go back to school. And I was lucky because that year I landed a part-time position. Still teaching 8th grade reading, but they needed an extra reading teacher. And they were like, this would be perfect for you. You could be at home with Leo in the afternoons. And I was like, this is great. It'll give me the time I need as a teacher and in the afternoons as a mom. So I did that for another year. And then I couldn't handle it, honestly. And it's still hard for me to admit this. I am still trying to find the work-life balance when it comes to being a mom and a teacher. But I felt like that year, it was a great school year, but even as a part-time teacher, I felt like I wasn't giving my all to the students. It could have had something to do with never getting any sleep, not being able to plan as much as I had wanted for my classroom.
So I decided time out on you right now for just a second. I want to stop you because there's two things that you said that I want to just lay out for everybody. One is that you felt like you weren't giving everything that you could to your kids. I don't think that's fair to you. I think that as a person and as teachers, a lot of times we feel like there's a level that we need to hit every single time. And that's the only way we can give everything we have. And in reality, you were giving as much as you possibly could, because I can't imagine you ever not giving the things you could. So just because you couldn't give what you could give before you were, taking care of Leo, doesn't mean that you weren't giving your best that you could give then. And so I think it's important to make that distinction, is that you may have felt like you weren't quite doing as much as you wanted to hit a high standard that you have, but the reality is that you were giving, you were giving as much as you could at the time. And sometimes sometimes for a lot of us, that's the best we can do.
Yeah. And I know I was doing the best I could do. And it just felt like it wasn't enough, because I felt like the previous years I had been able to like plan more exciting things and just be there one-on-one for my students more and spend more time after school and before school. And now it's impossible, right? Because I'm devoting all of my time to this little person now. And I think that's something I'm still struggling with. And I appreciate everything that you're saying. And I know, like, deep down that that's true. But it's still like this internal struggle that I've had ever since becoming a mom, really. And I know just talking to other moms who are also educators, or even if they're not educators, there's just that mom guilt that we have. And also, just like I said before, trying to find that balance. And it's almost like trying to come to terms with this new identity that you have. Because my identity before, when people ask me, hey, what do you do? Like, I'm a teacher. Like, this is my life. My students are my life. This is where I spend most of my day. This is what I spend most of my time on. And now when they ask me, I say, hey, I'm a mom, right? This is what I'm spending most of my time on. So it's been hard for me to give up. And I know I'll be back in the classroom eventually. And I'm still a teacher, but it's been hard to kind of give up that piece of me. And I'm still like trying to come to terms with that and still struggling with that. And I still miss it a lot too. And if I could, I would still be in the classroom. But childcare, unfortunately, is super expensive. And that's like a whole other beast that we could tackle in another entire podcast.
That's in my other podcast that I run called Why Can't People Stay Home with Their Kids for More Than 5 Minutes?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So it's something that I'm still, honestly, 4 years after becoming a mom, and now I'm a mom to 2 little boys.
Yep.
It's something that I still struggle with, and I really miss having that part of me. I miss having my own classroom, and it's a tough topic for me still to talk about because I've given up that part of me, and it kind of feels selfish to say too because I love being a mom. I love it. It's great. It's so rewarding. But at the same time, I don't think a lot of people, unless they've experienced it themselves, understand like the sacrifices too that come along with it. So
and it's honestly, this part of the topic, although your beginning and throughout the beginning of your career was awesome. And I don't think people realize how cool some of the stuff you were doing with your kids and how awesome you were as a teacher, which is why I think you felt so much guilt about not being able to hit this level that you were at before. But one of the things I think is really spectacular, really important about your story, I think really resonates, is how you have had to process all that and how you've kind of come to grips with it. And I know that one of the things that is really, really, I think is really important for a lot of people is to understand that when you're ready and able to get back to the classroom, it's going to look a little different. And that's going to be okay. Like, you're still going to be an awesome teacher, and you're still going to be someone who the kids have a good relationship with and will come to when they need things, and are going to have built a better love for reading after having been in your class. But it's going to look different, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, for sure. And I've thought about that too. I'm like, oh my goodness, like I feel like I'm missing out on so much, and I'm not going to be at the same level where I was. But also, like, me, like, my relationships are the most important things with my kids. So as long as I have that, I know I'll be okay. And the other things will come. I will learn the things that I wasn't there to learn the past few years. All the technology, things like that, those things are secondary. I can, go to a training for that or whatever. But yeah, it'll be different. It'll feel different to me. It'll be scary, I think, when I do return, but also exciting. And, I'm still me. I still know what is important for my students. And so I'll just go in there with that, with the relationships is the number one goal.
And that's so important. And I think there's a couple things you'll bring that will be unique now in your perspective. Is one, I think you'll have an appreciation for that experience. Have an appreciation for the time you get to spend in the classroom, having spent enough time out of it. But the other thing I think, and it's something that I realized when I became a father, was that I had a very different relationship with the parents.
Oh my goodness! Yeah.
With my parents that I worked with, and parents in general, it really changed my perspective on how I spoke with parents, and also how I. So, like, one of the things, and I'm trying really hard to avoid the term because I don't ever use it anymore, but the term deal with parents, because they're not someone that I should be dealing with. It's not like they're a headache. There shouldn't be a headache for me.
They're part of the team.
Yes. And as, your son will be approaching school age soon. and you will most certainly find out that it is difficult to be an educator parent.
Oh my goodness. Yes, I'm so glad you brought this up. Yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up, actually, because I remember years ago, before I had kids, when I was like very active on Edu Twitter, I remember saying, like, I remember this tweet vividly. I said something about, I get mad when I see other educators saying that becoming a parent makes you a better educator, because I'm not a parent yet, and I do my best to have these relationships with the kids, and I don't think becoming a parent would make me a better educator. And like, I vividly remember sending that tweet out. And now I'm like, oh.
I've said things similar to that before.
I'm like, okay. Like, after I had Leo, and now he started preschool, I'm like, okay, I've had to go to meetings for Leo and sit down with the teachers and the principals and things like that. And I'm sitting there as a teacher and a parent. And like, it's definitely made me a better educator. Like, I've thought about things that I would have changed when I've been talking to parents, or things that I should say, or things that change my language when it comes to meeting with parents and things like that. And so you're totally right. It does make you a better educator, because I think it just gives you a different perspective. And maybe not a better educator, but just like an educator that's more aware. Does that make sense?
I think that's a good point, because you're not necessarily any people who don't have kids can be amazing teachers. And I don't want to make it sound like you can't be an amazing teacher if you don't have children. It's just that for me personally, after I became a father, I had a different perspective on what it was like for those parents, because a lot of times, like, you've heard the conversations, I'm sure, where somebody's like, that is so-and-so's kid, that those parents don't care. Like, yes, they do. Like, just because, and one of the things that I realized, like, I worked in early childhood. I worked in K2, and my daughter's in first grade. And when she comes home with stuff that I have to work on her with, sometimes I'm like, how could I teach 21st graders the same topic, but I can't get my own child to figure this out? And she's bright. Like, she's a pretty bright kid, but I will try to explain it to her, and she's like, I don't know what you're trying to tell me. She's like, I don't get it. I'm just like, you know what? Let's just ask your teacher. I give up.
Right.
because as a parent, it's different. It's like, I could get 20 kids to do, mathematical backflips and teach kids to learn how to read, but I can't get my own kid to put her shoes on. or stop doing handstands in the living room at 9:00 at night. Like,
right. Yeah. And it really is. And so Leo, has a language delay. He'll be 4 Friday, like I said, and he started preschool this year. And I noticed, so he was my first kid, so I didn't really notice anything at first. But then when he was around other kids, I'm like, those kids are talking, like, a lot more than Leo is talking. So we have this really cool program in Missouri First Steps, which I wouldn't have known about if I wasn't a teacher, where you can get like free services. Speech therapist came to the house like once a week, and then he was enrolled in a special education program at a preschool, which is really awesome because he gets all the services he needs at this school. And so I remember sitting down for his first IEP meeting, and I was so nervous. I'm like, I've sat down and had so many IEP meetings for my students before as a teacher, but like now I'm on the other side of the table, and it's so strange to me. And I remember the teachers and the speech therapist was going through his evaluation and things like this. And I would like make a point to stop every now and then to like say my piece or my thoughts or whatever. And I remember his teacher looking at me and saying, okay, like, we appreciate everything that you're saying right now, but we need you to be his mom right now and not a teacher. And so even just that perspective, like, was kind of hard for me to, separate the teacher and the parent. So after she said that to me, I was like, you know what? You are right. And I'm so relieved, because that's all I want to do. I just want to be his parent. I just want to like do all the things that a mom and son would do and not have to worry about, acting like his speech therapist all throughout the day, or worrying about whether or not he's getting what he needs, because that's their job. And I trust them as educators, just like how I would want somebody to trust me with their child. So separating the teacher and the parent was hard for me too in the beginning.
It's a really hard thing to do.
Yeah.
And I think I learned, so like my daughter's preschool teacher was incredible. Like she's like still, I really hope my son gets to go to preschool with her because she was awesome. Like,
teachers are all incredible. I feel like
she built like a giant like room sized gingerbread house in her classroom, or like log cabins for Abraham Lincoln. They put on like she would every month they would learn about a different country and they'd eat foods from that country, and they would learn music and things like that, and the language. So like in preschool she learned how to count in like 12 languages. Or 10 languages, something like that. It was insane. It was so like she's amazing, and her kindergarten teacher was totally different. And and I've taught kindergarten, so for me, I was like, I'm worried about this. Like I'm very worried about my kid, and so I talked to some people. I talked to my wife, and I'm like, I just got to shut up and step back and let her do her thing. And as long as nothing's bad. Right. I'm going to let it go. I said, because I wouldn't do it this way, but I'm going to let it go. And I'm just going to see what happens. And like you said, trust the educators to do the things they do. And my daughter's kindergarten experience was awesome. Like she loved kindergarten. She left there loving school, having a good base for first grade to go to read. She was good with numbers and like everything that she would want to be able to do. And it was because I just stepped back and didn't let her do her thing. I want to ask you a question, and you can totally just pass on this question if you want, but because it might be hard to answer and you might not want to. So as a parent and sitting in those IEP meetings and stuff, like the way you talk about it, your child, like you talk about Leo and you talk about him getting services he needs and everybody doing the things he needs for them. You have the perfect attitude for a parent about this. What was it? Was it difficult for you as a parent to kind of process all that and say, all right, this is what my kid needs? Or was being an educator before that, did that make a difference? Like, did that really help? Because I had a lot of parents that had a hard time when they first, especially like kindergarten parents, when they first like have to come into an IEP meeting. It's really hard to process the whole thing.
Yeah. Honestly, before I got him the help he needed, I was really nervous because I was comparing him, right? We would go like on play dates and these kids were doing like speaking a lot more than him. And Leo is very bright. Like he's 4 and he's already reading like full on paragraphs and he can speak Spanish and
of course he's reading everything.
Yeah. He's brilliant.
He's reading Tolkien. I mean,
yeah, right. He's reading Tolstoy, his namesake there. But he just has a hard time like expressing himself verbally. Like his brain, I think, works too fast for his mouth. So at first I was like, my mind was racing. I'm like, what's wrong with him? And then I thought about it for a while, and it took me a while to process this, like you said. And I'm like, I'm thinking about this the wrong way. Like I'm asking myself what's wrong with my own kid. And there's nothing wrong with him. Like as a teacher, I would never say that about one of my students. I wouldn't say, what's wrong with so-and-so? They're not getting this, you know? I would say,
clap for that statement already. Like, that's like clap.
Yeah.
That makes me happy.
Yeah. But when it's your own child, it's hard. Yeah. Like you said. So being an educator did help in that way. I was like, I would never think that about one of my students. I would think, what do I need to do to help them? So as soon as I got that through my head and I was like, what do I need to do to help Leo? Because obviously he learns differently. He needs different things than other kids his age need. I was okay with it. I came to terms with it. And once I had his IEP meeting, which was kind of hard because they were talking about things that he should be doing, but he's not doing. That was kind of tough. The very first meeting was tough.
But like a roundtable meeting with 7 people telling you the things your kid can't do. Which is really
but,
hard to go through.
That also helped me think about how I would want to handle those meetings as a teacher, because I was thinking about the language I would use. I left there thinking, okay, for the most part, that was a really positive meeting, but something I would have changed as a teacher would say, this is what your kid should be doing that he isn't doing. I would change that to, this is what your child isn't doing. This is what he is doing. And these are the strengths that we're going to use to meet the goals. So it's like I said, it was tough, separating the teacher and the educator at first. And until I got it through my head that there's nothing wrong. He just learns differently. I kind of came to peace and terms with the fact that Leo's a little bit behind on his language, but we're doing everything that we can to get him to where he needs to be. And I've talked to, other parents when I was going through this and having kind of a tough time with it. I talked to other educators and parents who were in similar situations, and that helped a lot too. So just having a community to talk to about it and just vent to about it even helped a lot as well. But that's a good question. Because
oh, it's hard. Yeah. I mean, it really is. I know that I used to talk to parents before an IEP meeting, and I'd say, your kid is awesome. I love your kid to death. These are all the awesome things your kid does. And I'm not going to say any of those things in the meeting because I want your kid to have every possible service they can possibly get that will help them to be successful. So when we walk through those doors, everything I say is going to sound different because my goal is to get them the services they need, which is hard because I remember at one meeting I told the mom that and the dad showed up and I didn't know it was coming. And the dad left that meeting ghost-faced, horrified. And I pulled him aside and I said, look, your kid needs certain things to be successful, and I give those things to your kid anyway, and she's awesome. I said, but if I don't make sure that she gets them before she leaves my classroom, she's not going to have them anywhere else. And if she doesn't have them anywhere else, it's going to be terrible. It's not going to be fair for her. So I'm going to say what I have to say to make this work.
Totally. And that's what you should be doing. And that just reminds me, my sister is a special education teacher. For I think K through 4th grade. So she has the severely disabled kids. She's an autism specialist. And I was talking to her about Leo's first IEP meeting. I was I'm really nervous about it and I'm not sure how I'm going to process all of it. And she's if they're really good educators and they've been mindful about how the parents feel and stuff too, she's they'll talk about what Leo is good at as well. And she told me the way she handles her IEP meetings is she starts every single IEP meeting out and not spending too much time on it because there's so much to process during an IEP meeting. But she said that at the beginning of every meeting, she likes to talk about celebrations. So they have a little celebration about what so-and-so is great at and what they enjoy about them in class and all of their strengths. And I think that helps a lot too, because then you're not just focusing on all
list
of
the stuff that your kid needs to improve on.
The long list of goals that they need to meet. And also, if you're not an educator, there's so much EDU jargon in those meetings too.
It's a pile of crap.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. So just having the celebrations and talking about strengths, I think helps a lot too. And that's made me mindful as a teacher when I have those meetings. Now I know how the parents feel and how to choose the positive language so that they aren't leaving those meetings in tears because
at the middle school level, it's actually that's basically I think my only role there is to interject some things that the kid does well because I teach a special area class, which is why they tend to pull me for IEP meetings a lot of times. because I guess I'm not super important, so to speak. You didn't see my air quotes, but so like they will pull me as the gen ed teacher for IP meetings, and
Yep.
I know, I'm like, sometimes I've only seen their kid for half a marking period, so every other day. So like I've only seen your kid 5 times. I don't know them super well, but I know them well enough to know that, you know, this is something they did well. So my main goal in that meeting is to say something nice about your kid, because the rest of the meeting is about the things that they don't do well and the testing that they struggled with, and just, my purpose here is to make you feel a little bit better because your kid does this and this well.
Yeah.
So it's a nice thing to be able to do that.
Yeah, we appreciate that. The parents of the special education kiddos, we appreciate that a lot. So as a parent, you know that they're so amazing at so many different things. And it was hard to wrap my head around this too. Like, I wanted everyone to know how amazing Leo is. You know, I wanted his teachers to see everything that I see at home too, but they're only with him. He's in preschool, like 3 hours a day. They don't get to see all of the amazing things he does. And it was hard for me to wrap my head around that at first too. And then there were some things in the meeting where I was like, well, he does that all the time at home. Like,
yeah. And you know what? There are things that he will do all the time at school that he will not do at home. And you'd be like,
I know.
That's my kid. Like
I know, he's like angelic apparently at school, and I'm like,
yeah. I mean, my kid is good most of the time at home. Like, I can't complain. She's awesome, but she's loud and she sings all day long, like she will sing made up songs. She'll make up her own song and sing for like 4 hours straight. And as wonderful and amazing as that is as a parent, it's also 4 hours straight of a 6-year-old singing.
Oh my goodness.
And she doesn't, like, she's the angel of every teacher's class. And I just think to myself, great, I'll deal with the 4 hours of singing. Bring it on. Yes. Like, it's going to be fun. We'll sing together. Let's do it.
And be that way at school. And there you go. She's probably going to be in a musical one day.
Probably. I mean, she sings and she does handstands and she dances and she does all her gymnastics in the house, and she's like,
I want to.
Yeah.
Your second born is probably going to be like the opposite, because
he climbs on everything.
Yes, my two are complete opposites. I'm like, Emerson came around. I'm like, where did you come from? Like, you are nothing like your brother. And it's like fun and amazing and hilarious, but exhausting at the same time.
Yeah, he does do a lot of things that she does because he wants to do everything that the big kids do, which is I think a second born kind of thing. But it's a totally different animal. We were talking about this before we started recording, but two, and then for those of you who have more than two, God bless you. But as awesome as they are, it's the amount of exhaustion you feel is amplified by the second, and then obviously I'm sure third, fourth, and 8 millionth child, because after 3 I think I would probably just die. But at that point the chaos is so intense that there's nothing to do. But yeah, this has been I think it's such a good message and a good thing to share with so many people, because I think so many teachers who are parents struggle with that identity of how do I get that balance. And one of the things I try to explain to people a lot is that you're never going to be 50-50. It's not like you're stuck in the middle, like at this perfectly balanced scale. There are times when you need to spend a lot more time at home, and it's going to be 70-30. And there are other times when things are fine at home and you can invest a bit more at school, or you needed more at school, and it's going to be more pushed the other way. And it's always going to be in flux, and the idea is to make sure that it doesn't all fall apart.
Yeah, and I've talked to so many other moms, because just trying to figure it out myself, and they're like, you know what, there is no balance. You just kind of, like you just said, you just kind of go with the flow and go where you're needed. And there might be a phase where your kid is like not sleeping at all, and you're gonna have to give up some time from the classroom to be at home with them, and it just depends. And I am a recovering control freak, I guess you can say. Having kids has definitely changed my point of view on how much control I have, and just learning to choose my battles and go with the flow. But definitely missing the classroom. Can't wait to get back one of these days. But I feel like I'm learning just as much at home with my kids and from them than I would be learning in the classroom from my students as well. And there's pieces I can take from motherhood and take them to the classroom, and vice versa. So it's a lot of fun. It's just a work in progress, constantly learning.
Of course, and I think we all are. The idea of balance I like to give people is that it's like the tightrope walker. Like, they're never perfectly balanced. They're always wobbling back and forth a little bit. That's everybody. Like, nobody's got it perfectly all together. Everybody's kind of just hoping not to fall off the rope and go down. So, and it's okay that if you have to spend more time to one side than the other for a while, that's awesome. And it's not a bad thing. So what I want to...
I'm so sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. It's okay.
I think it's also good to show your students that you're human too. So, when I would walk into the classroom exhausted, I would just be honest with them. Like, hey, I was up all night and things aren't going to be perfect today. You're going to have to work with me. I feel like so many of us try to be like that perfect teacher, but we need to show the kids that we're human too.
Yeah. I have a kid on my robotics team, and he looks at me and goes, Mr. Costello, how much sleep do you get a night? It's like, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours sometimes. And it's like, that's not enough. Like, that's not enough for you. You should take a vacation or something. And I just looked at him like, from what?
I wish it were that easy.
It's like, this is not what keeps me awake.
Right.
It's that when I get home, I don't want to spend my time working on other stuff. Like, I want to go hang out with my kids, and then when I finally go to sleep, that's when I try to catch up on everything else. So, I think there's so much here. I think there's going to be so much that people are going to connect with in this conversation. It's just been a lot of fun to talk to you. I didn't realize that how long we've been talking, but I looked at the clock. I'm like, we've been talking for like an hour. So,
it's just, you've been great to talk to, and there's so much stuff. I know I rambled a lot on quite a few things.
That's the best part. The best part is the rambling stories and the sidetracks that we take. That's the whole point of this. That's the whole point of this podcast, is that basically we're allowing people the vantage point of listening in on a coffee shop conversation or something that we'd have over a drink to hang out and catch up. And I think that there's so much that I think people are going to get out of this, because so much of your story, I think all of us feel and connect with, because of the difficulty in balancing the fears, the struggles, the different pieces that we don't know. And I think there's a lot there that people are going to connect with. So I can't thank you enough for sharing all of that with us tonight. And
thank you so much for inviting me.
Talk with me. I am grateful for you for sharing everything. And what I would say is that when your time is right for you to be back in the classroom, you're going to have a lot of kids who are very fortunate to work with you. And I hope that everybody enjoys listening to your story. I would ask you for some advice that you would give to other teachers, but you've given so much advice throughout the past 45 minutes or so that I don't know what else there is to give. But so if anybody wants to connect with you, I know you said you don't quite you're not quite as active as you used to be, just because time is so short.
Right.
But if anybody wanted to connect with you and ask you a little bit more, or reach out to you as a parent or an educator or a former educator, how would they reach you?
You can definitely find me with my Twitter handle at Top Knots and Lattes if you like the mix of parenting, education, and also random poetry tweets.
Random poetry is good.
I am your follow for that. And I'm really excited. I'm just going to plug this really quickly. I have a poetry anthology coming out pretty soon.
No way.
So, yeah. So I'll be tweeting about that.
I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I'll be
wait.
tweeting it more. But I will be excited to share that when that is published and available for you all. So you'll get to see the other side of me that we didn't talk too much about tonight, which is totally fine. But that's how you can find me if you're interested in a lot of random.
Do you have a name for the poetry anthology so people are looking for it, they can find it?
Yes, it's called Mosaic, and I have a few poems in there, and it's not just me; it's a lot of other amazing poets that we just put our artwork and poetry and short stories together into one anthology, and it's got a lot of amazing work in there. So I'm excited to promote that more once it's available to all of you.
That's fantastic. I did not even know we were going to get. If I had known that was there, we would have talked about that at some point. And
that's okay.
And we would have talked for 2 hours, and So thank you again for coming on, and everybody connect with Lauren. Check out Mosaic when it comes out. There's going to be some amazing poetry there. If you haven't seen things that Lauren tweets out, you're going to find some great stuff in there for sure. And I hope that all of you get a chance to connect with her and check out that book when it's ready to be yours. Thanks again, everybody, for listening, and we will catch you next time on The Teacher's Journey.